Super excited to announce a new experience on CreativeLive. It's called Fast Class. You've told us that you're busy and sometimes it's hard to dive into a full class from start to finish. So essentially, we're now giving you a shortened highlight version of our top CreativeLive classes. You can always dive into the full class with 5, 10, or 15 hours of great content. But now, if you're just looking to focus on a few of the highlights or want to be able to skip quickly to something that really interests you, you can now get a shortened fast class version of that class. We're also thinking this might be able to help you explore a new craft and save time while doing it. This is a great tool to curate your learning experience to help create the life that you seek. So you're probably thinking, great, how do I access this new experience on CreativeLive? That's easy. All you have to do is be a subscriber to the Creator Pass, and then all this is yours. If you're feeling isolated and looking for creative connection, try tuning into creativelive.com/TV. That's where we've got a 24/7 live stream from the kitchen counters.
I can do that backlit shot that I really like to do.
From the studios and living rooms of many of the world's top creators, where we're doing musical performances, Q&As, cooking shows, virtual book tour events, drawing, spoken word poetry, and more.
Life passed me by waiting for an invitation when the world is greater than my nation or my occupation. Be someone you've never been. You feel all that adrenaline? It's medicine.
It actually helps me feel like my days are more purposeful.
I hope that out of this deep pain will come some collective growth.
Dive into CreativeLive TV today.
Hello, everybody. This is so exciting. This is our first office hours segment of MIFF this year, and I am here with the beautiful and the lovely and the talented Delacey Skinner.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Great to be here.
Yeah, this is so much fun. So Delacey's film, Liar, you made it to MIFF last year. How fun was MIFF? Oh,
It was
sad
awesome.
It's not happening this year.
Yeah.
Such a fun time.
It was so fun. It was great to hang out with everybody, and I'm sad not to have it happening this year too.
I know. Oh, I'm in the same boat. So Liar was one of the most entertaining films. It was such a blast to watch. I remember watching it during the submissions phase, and I was like, oh, this is just brilliant. What did you shoot Liar on? Remind me.
We shot it on a Max.
Okay.
Yeah.
A 10S Max.
Yeah.
And then just an anamorphic.
Yep. Anamorphic 10X Max. So it was.
So simple, so lightweight. How many days was your production? Because I remember you had kind of a big crew. How big was your crew?
We had it was a decent sized crew. We had a DP, we had a couple of talent, we had makeup, we had sound, and then kind of an AD producer type, and then one sort of catch-all grip gaffer, do everything, a couple of PAs. Yeah, so it was a decent size.
Yeah, that's the full thing. That's awesome. How many days did it take?
Well, the shooting we did all in one day.
Okay.
But it was definitely a solid week, I would say, of pre-pro.
Totally.
Yeah.
most important part.
Exactly. Exactly. And then we did, there was obviously some time ahead of that for writing and the, sort of the creative idea generation.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's
So
great. And I mean, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think from the time that we decided to do it to finishing the film was probably like 4 weeks total.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's a big workload. I feel like a lot of people beginning in filmmaking don't understand what happens on the front end, what happens before shooting. So I'm so excited that you're here to chat pre-pro with us, because this is like the perfect example of kind of what goes into something before the camera's even turned on or in the picture. So yeah, I want to kind of hand it off to you, but I'll do that with a question. What was the process for Liar specifically in kind of just generating the idea of it? Is it something that like suddenly hit you? Is it something that you worked for and like came out over time? I'd love to hear about that process.
Absolutely. Well, so really the first step was when we decided, I have the two people that I worked most closely with, the DP, Ryan Bodie, and Susie Whitlock was our producer AD. The first thing was just, okay, we got to come up with ideas. What are we going to do? What kind of story can we tell in 3 minutes?
Yeah.
So the first phase was brainstorming. And the way that I like to brainstorm, I think about filmmaking, it's one of the things I love about it is that it uses so many different parts of your brain and so many different skill sets. And I think there's this kind of bucket of skill sets that's like creative. And then there's a bucket of skill sets that's like organization and how do you get it done? And the creative side of it, you almost kind of have to keep those two things separate, because if you're thinking about like, how am I going to get this done while you're doing the creative part, you'll never write anything because you'll keep getting tripped up.
Yeah.
So that first process was really just write down every single idea that seems like something that's interesting that we might be able to kind of tell in that constraint of 3 minutes.
So no boundaries of the time is the only boundary.
Time is really was really the only boundary. And I think, what I look for in that process in my own thinking is, what am I interested in? What makes me feel something?
Right.
Because I think that, that's really what we're attracted to when we're watching stories is having a feeling.
Yep. And
I think the thing about creators is that we really have to trust that the things that we feel, that kind of internal way that we process life, that's actually really interesting to other people. So if it's something that's an idea that kind of turns you on or gets you excited, and in this case, the story was based kind of on a true story, not my own, but a friend of a friend's. And I had thought about it for a long time and had kind of had it, probably jotted down in a bunch of notebooks, stuff somewhere.
Yep.
So it was one of the things that came out in the brainstorming process. And after, I kind of wrote down a bunch of ideas, we sat as a team and went through them and talked about which ones sort of sparked something.
Okay.
And this was the one that felt like both that it sparked feeling and also was structured like a story, that there was a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Totally.
Which I think is important as well.
Yeah, and that's hard to achieve in a 3-minute film.
It is.
Yeah, you guys, you really, I remember watching it, and when the ending came, it was like, how did they get me thinking one thing was happening, and then the ending tells me that I was totally wrong, and they like wrapped it up in all but 3 minutes. That was just like such a cool experience to like view it for the first time. So yes, this is me agreeing with you. There is an absolute beginning, middle, and end to the story, and it worked.
Yeah. And I think that's, I think that's true of anything. I think even any genre, documentaries have that kind of structure, even experimental films, the ones that really grab you, they take you on a ride, and they take you from one place to another. And there's some kind of a flow and some kind of a structure to it. So that was really an important part of identifying the right story.
Yeah.
And then kind of shifting into that more analytical, organized kind of brain space, and figuring out, is this something that we can do? Right. Can we make it happen? Can we do it in a day? Is it something, or would it take 2 days? And what would that look like? Right. And from there, we actually took it. I mean, it's interesting because even though it's, there's no dialogue really in the script. Mm-mm. So one of the things was, actually taking it and putting it into a script form, right, even though there wasn't dialogue. And I think I think sometimes when you're making something short like this, that can feel like a formality, but I think it's really important. So much of this process, particularly in pre-pro and on the shoot day, is communication. Yeah. And so it's important to have multiple ways to communicate with people. Storyboards, scripts, that kind of a different set of tools. Yeah. And so for this one, in addition to writing the script, I also took the story and broke it down into beats. Okay. That were very distinct in terms of what was happening with the character, the main character, what she was thinking and what she was doing in each beat of the story. And I want to say that there ended up being like maybe 8 beats in the whole thing. Okay. And part of constructing, kind of giving it that structure and making sure that you could sort of feel each shift that happened was defining where those shifts happened, defining what the character was thinking and feeling at that moment, and doing at that moment. And then for the communication piece, one of the things that I actually did was I gave each beat a piece of music, not to be used in the film, but to communicate the emotion of it. And interesting. To kind of communicate that to the actor and to communicate it to the DP so that he could think about it with camera motion. Wow. Which is, I think you can feel that in the film, sort of that sense of a shift, emotional shift through it.
Oh, totally. And for those who may not understand what you mean by beat, how would you explain that? Like, what is that to you?
Yeah, I mean, a beat is a section, a chunk of action. And, a beat can change when a new character enters. A beat can change when there's just any kind of major shift in the action. Sometimes it happens because you change location, right. But it's a shift in action in the story.
Right. Wow, I love that music idea. Did that seem helpful when you actually used it? Was that an effective way to communicate?
It was really helpful, particularly with the actress who played the lead role. Okay. We were doing most of this on a volunteer basis. And so we didn't really have a lot of time. We didn't have time to rehearse with the actor, all of that. So she really had to come to set, with some kind of understanding of what we were doing, and we needed to be able to communicate really quickly. Yep. Because we were kind of on the day of the shoot losing light a little bit. Because we were trying to get it all done in that one day. So
scary quick.
Super scary. And it was it was tight. Yeah. So the thing that she said about the music was that it really, for her, she was like, this is great. She listened to it the day before, each of the tracks, because I made her a playlist on Spotify and just sent that to her along with sort of the description of each beat.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, it made it easier for her to access the emotion, I think.
That is a lot of such a great idea. I'm seeing the comments. People are like, what a great idea. No, that's awesome. That is huge, huge, huge in kind of helping people making MIFF films this year. That can be a very, very, very useful tool.
Yeah, well, I think, look, I mean, a lot of what we're doing is rhythmic. You know, I mean, like a story has a rhythm to it, and that there's the literal music, you know, that you put in at some point, the literal sound, but there's also sort of a sense of rhythm in terms of how you cut the shots and how a sequence feels, and you know, our emotions have kind of rhythm to them. So I think it's something that we don't always think about in film, right? But that's really I took a class with a instructor once it was a filmmaking class where he talked about that our job as directors is to control the breath of the audience. And that, you know, that emotion is partially in, you know, in the breathing, and that, you know, when something suspenseful happens, you kind of hold your breath, right? And so that's a kind of rhythm that we're bringing into the screen, and you know, into that relationship with the audience.
Yeah. Wow. I love it.
So, yeah. And so then from there, you know, thinking about pre-pro, I mean, a lot of this really was, again, since we knew we were only going to have a day, doing the work ahead of time so that everything went as smoothly as possible on that day. We had a piece of it that was night shooting, which was, you know, amazing to be able to do on an iPhone and like have it, you know, come out as well as it did. But we ran some tests. So, you know, part of our pre-pro process was looking to see what the camera could do and what the lenses could do, and, you know, how all that would work. And I think that's, you know, breaking down your script so that you're grouping together things that are all shot in one location, or you know, which pieces are if you've got talent in it, and you're going to have wardrobe changes, trying to group everything together with wardrobe, or group scenes together that have the same actors in them, so that you can organize your day and have people there only for the pieces that you need them for. So we went through that process. We went through a location scout process.
Yeah. What was that like?
It was, you know, it was interesting because, again, you know, we were looking for free locations.
Totally.
And it was a little bit of a, you know, a tug of war between locations that were going to accommodate what we needed to do in terms of like having parking and all of that kind of thing, and then the locations that looked really great, or where we would have access to our second location or access to bathrooms. You know, there were a lot of logistics that went into the process. And, you know, when we found the place that we found, one of the things that we did that I think is often, you know, you can forget to do very easily. I have been on many a location scout where people have forgotten this part, but is to stand quietly at some point and listen.
Yeah.
For traffic, you know, for that kind of thing. And that was one of the challenges, because we were in parking lots, was finding a place where we would be able to record, you know, some ambient sound and not have it overwhelmed, or not have to stop every 5 minutes for, you know, a major traffic wait going through. And then, you know, the other thing that we did on that location scout, which I think is always really helpful, is, you know, we walked through the action. And so I walked through a lot of the blocking, kind of standing in for our talent. And Ryan, our DP, walked through the camera blocking. And we took still shots of that we then were able to take back and watch, you know, or watch some test footage, or look at still shots together to, you know, to kind of think about how long is it going to take to get this shot.
Yep.
There was one camera move that, you know, we did a little bit of rehearsal for. Ryan was standing on an Apple box, and he had a gimbal, and, you know, was trying to kind of get a certain motion with the camera. And, you know, those are the kinds of things that you can sort of lose a lot of time on in the shoot day. And so it's helpful if you can do a little bit of rehearsal, particularly of any kind of, you know, complex camera move ahead of time.
Right. So you're saying rehearsal isn't just for the actors.
Exactly.
It's for, everybody kind of on set. I love, that's great advice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, for our particular film, I think we made, I think it was 800. It might have been more than that. Sticky notes that said liar.
That was going to be one of my questions, is how many sticky notes really was that?
It was a lot. I mean, it was a lot. We had some left over for sure. But it was a lot. It was many hours. I think I sat for like 4 hours straight writing the word liar in black sharp.
Wow. Talk about pre-pro.
It was a line item in the budget.
Yeah, there you go. Oh, I love it. That's incredible.
Yeah.
So
and we had a lot too of like, this was one of the things that we worked out in pre-pro, was also sort of the coordination of which parts of the scene can we shoot while the car is getting sticky noted.
Right.
So, the car is in some of the scenes and not in others. So part of that sequencing of, the shoot process was, where's the car going to be in the shot? And, we could cover part of it while we were shooting on one side. And, because that was also, we had extra hands to do it, but it was time consuming.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I truly can't even imagine. Did you feel prepared on shoot day? Did it feel like all your work paid off? Were there any, did you have any moments where you're like, oh crap, like I didn't do that, or I didn't think about that? Were there any moments like that?
I think really the main thing was when we were starting to lose the light.
Yeah.
There was also actually a little bit, we had kind of a lunch break. It was more of sort of a quick on your feet lunch. Yep. And then we had a location shift where we shot in the parking lot. The little convenience store that we used for the checkout counter scene was right across the parking lot. So that was perfect. So we really only had one company move, which was to the house that we used for the night shooting. Mm-hmm. There was a scary moment when our DP had not eaten enough, and it was at the dinner break, and he was not feeling well, and it was like a good reminder to eat.
Yeah. Yes. And to plan in your schedule time to eat, right? In pre-pro, write it into your schedule.
Exactly. It is so true, because if you don't eat and somebody passes out,
Yeah, that's a whole different story from there.
Yeah. And then I think the other thing, that there was one little, it worked out great, but it took us a minute to figure out when we were transferring footage, because it was a little bit different. And the thing that we ended up doing, which was one of the other amazing things about shooting on a phone, is we airdropped it.
Yeah. And airdrop, sometimes that can compress your footage, but when it works, man, that's like, it's a lifesaver.
Yeah.
So quick, so seamless.
Yeah, it worked. No, it worked really beautifully. It was
that's always so nice when it works. Okay, one more thing, because I do want to go to a Q&A in a couple of minutes. So anybody watching, you guys can start dropping your questions in the comments, and we will get through those. I did want to ask you, though, if you had any inspiration for Liar, or going into this, that kind of helped you write it or shoot it or direct it, or any aspect of it. Was there like a very clear inspiration?
Well, I think there were sort of two things. One was, there was the story itself, like I said, that I'd been carrying around for a while, and I was really interested in exploring the idea of, or this feeling of when you just kind of lose your mind for a second, and what that feels like, and what it feels like. Yeah, exactly. And then what it feels like when you kind of come out of it. And the way that we can kind of laugh at ourselves. Mm-hmm. But the other thing that I also highly recommend that people check out is that for a couple of years now, I've been doing film workshops with a woman named Joan Shekel. They're Joan Shekel Filmmaking Labs. And I had taken Susie and Ryan with me to do a lab on action. And I think we were so excited by the work that we were doing there. It was like a weekend lab workshop that we really wanted to try it out. And I think that's a lot of where some of the inspiration for that process of breaking down, the script into beats and thinking about how to communicate that in a way that was more feeling based. A lot of that came from the work that I've done with Joan. And so, it was wanting to put, this kind of more feeling based approach into action that was really inspiration. Yeah.
Great. We have a couple questions. Somebody said, how much have you enjoyed working with an iPhone? What was that experience like for you? Was this your first film with an iPhone? Give us the rundown.
Yeah. So it was my first film with an iPhone.
Okay.
What I do for a living, I make commercials, and so I'm used to working with smaller. I mean, they are smaller crews, but big cameras. And so we were really excited to see what we could do with the phone because it is so much lighter and it is so much more nimble, and there's I don't know. There's something about the intimacy of it that's different, than having this huge, kind of intrusive camera. And so that part of it, I'll tell you, like when I took the footage to the post house, the other thing that was kind of interesting is, I was working with editors that I work with all the time, and they're used to getting, professional camera footage, and somebody walked into the edit suite and said, there's no way that was shot on a phone.
I know. Isn't it amazing?
Yeah.
That feeling every time we make something with a phone is just like, oh man, I love like pushing it to its limit and like really kind of proving, what they can do, because they're pretty amazing if you know how to use them.
Yeah. Well, and this was also the first time that I had shot on an anamorphic.
Okay.
And so that was also really awesome. And again, it was just the footage came out so well, and the process, the workflow was really easy, which was great.
Oh yes. It takes away some complicated kind of procedures for sure. Somebody said, considering the future of smaller crews, do you feel this will affect the types of stories you tell with film?
Yes. I mean, I think, but I'll tell you what, I actually think it's in the best and most exciting way. It's not that there isn't still going to be an appetite in a market for really big budget, superhero action movies, which I personally enjoy very much. And so I hope they continue. But I think we're at a moment, especially with all of the platforms that we have available, where more of an independent film style, more intimate stories that are more tapping into how people feel and how we live our lives. And, I also think that kind of story at this moment is really interesting.
Yeah.
And I love that kind of storytelling. And
me too.
So, yeah, I mean, and I think having a situation where we have to be more thoughtful, and have smaller crews and be really efficient and careful with, time and space and all of that. I think that there are going to be some really interesting stories. I mean, you already see it happening on Zoom.
Totally.
There's so many interesting things happening.
Oh yeah. I heard about Orange is the New Black is like filming a season with all of the actresses just in their homes. I'm like, wow. How's that going to happen? So it's opening up a world that we wouldn't, normally have.
Absolutely.
So it's going to be interesting. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. The next one is, any advice for someone who is inexperienced in filmmaking, but is the writer, director, camera person, actor, and editor of a film? They said, how can you best organize yourself so you don't lose your mind? Great question.
It is a very good question. I think when you're wearing multiple hats, as a lot of us are when we're doing this kind of filmmaking, really thinking about those separate roles and doing, look, if it helps to actually literally put a different hat on, do it. Like, be deliberate about, I am writing now, and try to set aside how you would look at a script as an actor or a director in that moment, you know, or a DP in that moment when you're writing.
Yeah.
Because like I said, it's a really different part of your brain. And I think, you know, when you're done writing, set it down, you know, step away from it for a day and then come back to it as a director, you know, and think really about tapping into those different parts, because that it's a lot. And where I think things can easily get jumbled is if you were in the writing process and you're trying to think about it as a director, or, you know, you're thinking about it as a director and then you start to wonder about how you're going to look on camera as the actor. So as much as you can to sort of separate those roles out for yourself.
Yeah, that's great advice. Basically compartmentalize.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great advice. Okay, last question, because we only have a couple minutes. Somebody asked, is it better to identify the climax before writing a story?
Well, you know, I think it depends. I mean, I think writing is a process of discovery always. And so it can help to know kind of where you're going. In the case, for example, of Liar, when I first wrote it and when we first started talking about it, I didn't fully have the button on the end of it. And that came out of a conversation actually with my partner, who also makes ads and videos, and he's really great at, you know, putting buttons on the ends of things. And so he, you know, that conversation helped. So I think having some kind of an idea, at least of the feeling that you want your audience to have, and, you know, writing to that feeling. And it doesn't always necessarily have to be that you know exactly where it's going to go, but keeping in mind where you want them to come out in terms of their emotional state.
I love it. Such a good question and such a good answer. All right, it's 4:29. Can we squeeze in one more? Let's see. Let's see. Okay, really quick. I want you to give, if you had like, I don't know, your top 3 pre-pro tips for beginning filmmakers, what would those be?
Top 3 pre-pro tips. So number 1 is break it down. So, you know, just take whatever it is that you're going to shoot and really break it down shot by shot. Make a shot list, do a storyboard. I don't care if you have to draw stick figures, but really try to break it down into something that gives you each of the component parts. That would be 1. Number 2, I would say go to the location at the time of day that you plan to shoot, because it's going to change the light, even if that's your living room.
Yep.
Because the light in your living room is going to change. And, you know, going through that process of seeing what it looks like is really important, and hearing what it sounds like. And then 3, I would say, you know, if you're working with other people, think about how you're going to communicate with them and over communicate, because it's easy for stuff to get lost.
I love it. There you have it. Delacey, everybody. I mean, wow, what an amazing, like, amount of information in such a short amount of time. I hope this was helpful to all of you watching. Delacey, thank you so much. You were lovely.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, and I'm seeing in the comments that everyone's like, thank you, thank you, thank you. So thank you so much again. We will be back again next week at the same exact time with a special guest, but about a different filmmaking topic. So we will see you guys next week. Bye, guys.